Welcome back, friends. My name is Doug Neal, and I'm in the process of creating a Notion system that's specifically for sketchnoters. I want to build a setup that helps people taking visual notes store, share, and reuse their sketch notes over time. Last time I shared what it might look like to use Notion as a place to publish a single sketch note. Today, I want to show you how I've linked up the sharing of multiple sketch notes with a home page, because what's cool about Notion is that you can essentially use it as a blogging platform. You can have this cool combo of a private workspace and a public portfolio. And it's those two pieces that I'm building. And if you would like access to the set of Notion templates that I'm working on, come join us on Patreon. That's where you'll be able to grab the templates that I'm building, ask questions of me about Notion, request features for future versions of Notion for Sketchnoters. I'm excited to be able to share resources and chat with you there. So do come check us out. Link below for more info. With that, let me show you what the homepage of Notion for Sketchnoters looks like, because a lot has changed since the last video. All right, so here we are. I decided to change the cover image here to one of me sketchnoting. I added the Notion for Sketchnoters logo there as the main icon, a tagline here to let new folks know that what this project is all about is creating a knowledge management and portfolio system built using Notion that helps sketchnoters store, share, and reuse their work. And I've created a handful of different pages here for folks to explore. On the About page here, you'll see kind of what I wrote in the first video when I was just kind of defining the mission of this project. Then here, building on what you saw last time, here's where you're kind of getting a sense for what the public portfolio of your sketch notes might look like. Last time I shared the addition of this specific sketch note in the kind of database fields here that are worth including, but then how I'm approaching the sharing of images, the captioning of those images, and creating these little blocks that are units that you might use for future projects. Whether you're working on a presentation or an article, anything you might want to do with individual sketch notes, setting yourself up for being able to drop these sketch notes and maybe some narrative text into a new project so that you have a good starting point. Since then, I've added a few more of my previous sketch notes into this database. Here, one about the 4 philosophies of deep work from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. You can see the different concepts listed here. Similar approach. Here though, since this is just a single image, it's kind of a longer caption where I have bolded the 4 main concepts, the 4 different philosophies of deep work with a little bit of a description of each. And keep in mind too that these descriptions, while they might be helpful and useful for someone who maybe does a Google search about deep work and might make their way to this page, this isn't super tailored for new visitors. It's more within that realm of a starting point for when you want to use this sketch note or explore these ideas in some future work. So when you pull this whole block here, the image and caption, into a new project, my assumption is that you won't just use all of this text for that new thing, but you can pick and choose which of this you might want to copy and paste into that work. And then at the end of these posts, I just have a link back to the homepage of Notion for Sketchnoters. That brings us back here. One thing I do want to point out about that link, which is really cool, as we maybe hop over to another sketch note that I added to my public portfolio here. This one from a podcast interview between Mike Rohde and David Britton about the app concepts. You'll see that same kind of, this is a, what do they call it? A callout box maybe? Yeah, it's a callout, a specific type of block within Notion. But what I've done here is I've made this, it's actually a synced block. So I created this within one of these posts here, but when adding it to new ones, I basically just kind of selected this whole thing, hit copy, and then pasted and synced it to a new document so that if I change one thing about this box here, maybe like more awesome sketch notes here, since this is a block that is synced to right now 4 other pages. No matter where I make that edit in one of those blocks, it's going to show up in the others. And I can even delete it from this one, and that will show up in another. So that's one example of something cool and useful about Notion, especially for public-facing information. This almost becomes like a footer. So wherever you put this, so long as you paste and sync it, no matter where you edit this, it will also update it in those other locations. So if at some point I want to point people to something different at the end of these portfolio pages, I can do that just in one location, and that will update it everywhere. And since I have my portfolio public, if we hop over to a web browser, what you have been looking at, I've been sharing my Notion screen, but now if I go to a browser, looks pretty similar, but this is Chrome. I'm sharing my Chrome screen here. I am not logged into Notion within Chrome, so what you're seeing is what you would also see if you go to this website. Check out the sketch notes, see this portfolio here. You'll notice there's a search bar, which is cool. You can imagine as this builds, you yourself or visitors to your site could search a topic like creativity. Okay, so 2 of these sketch notes kind of directly address creativity. Let's check if productivity. One of them directly addresses productivity. So this is kind of a great way. And even like, let's look up a person. Let's look up Jim Collins. Okay, he shows up there. So that search feature can be a great way for you to search your sketch notes because it's looking both at the tags that you've created within a given post, but also the text itself. So if I, windows and mirrors, if I want to remember where, I remember some concept about windows, where was that? That will show up there. So this is the public portfolio. One thing that's goofy about the current public version of this website is that Notion kind of, I think, just updated how their links work. So when I go to try to use this link up here, there's this funky kind of redirect. It actually takes a couple of redirects to get me back to the Notion for Sketchnoters homepage. I think that's a little glitch with the recent update that I hope they address soon. But if you know more about that, let me know. Because you can kind of see what is cool about that is there's this kind of breadcrumb up top that, let's see if it maintains here. Yeah, kind of maintains as you go deeper into someone's Notion page, for example, or Notion setup. And it's kind of goofy that that link has that redirect. But if you follow the ones I've added to the bottom of the page, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it takes you where you would expect it to go. So this is meant to serve as an example of the type of public portfolio of your sketch notes that you might put out there. A few other new pages that I've added. We've got the templates. I wanted to describe the type of templates that I am building here. So the Notion system that I'm building has 2 components to it. There's a private workspace where you can track your sketch notes in progress and work on projects that involve combining completed sketch notes for things like articles or presentations, any other creative endeavor. And there's a public portfolio component. That's where you can share your sketch notes and written reflections on a public-facing website, still using Notion, nothing else that you need to buy or worry about creating. And in the same way that I'm showing you these different pages to my site, you can add your own pages with any other information that you want to share with folks who come across your work. And for a plug-and-play version of this type of setup, that's what's going on. That's what I'm offering through Patreon. Another thing that I wanted to include here, I'm actually going to edit this a little bit. I want to share the public portfolios that gotta hop over to Notion to edit this. So let me come back to Notion here, get me back to that page. Kind of interesting to go back and forth between editing things within my Notion space and then keeping an eye on what it looks like publicly. Rather than thinking of this as a directory, I actually want to call it Shoutouts, where I want to include the public portfolio of folks like maybe you using this Notion for Sketchnoters setup. And this kind of shoutouts page is included within one of the tiers on Patreon. So for folks that are at that tier, I just want to be able to add your name, and also, if you would like, link your name to your portfolio of sketchnotes. That sounded like a fun perk to include, but a directory felt a little too old school, so I want to try to find an icon that works better for shoutouts. Try to go with some sort of athletic analogy. Oh, maybe this one here? Yeah, shouting out other folks using Notion for sketchnoters. Yeah, let's go with that one. Shoutouts. There we go. Part of the reason I think Notion is a good tool specifically for sketchnoters is because of how kind of visual of a platform it is, the role that icons play and emojis, the way they're kind of integrated in this super easy but like engaging way. I feel like sketchnoters are going to be drawn to this. And notice that I edited the icon for the emoji for that page, and it automatically updated it within this kind of bullet point list here to round out what I've shared. Videos that are public to YouTube. As I'm recording this, I haven't yet published any, but I'm about to. So these will be listed here. A link to the YouTube channel, Notion for Sketchnoters. Oh, hey, this is kind of cool. So notice I'm in Notion right now. I created for myself a private workspace. I don't yet have anything here, but I wanted to create this page for me to kind of give notes to myself about like what I'm working on here. And notice it says restricted. So even though Notion for Sketchnoters itself is set to this public setting, so by default, any new pages that I create will also be public. But even though they're by default public, they don't have to stay public. So for this one, I decided to, I turned it off so that I could have this private workspace to create some notes for myself, maybe more dynamic things like working with databases that I only want for me, but I don't want to share publicly. So this is getting at that balance of having a private workspace for you and a public portfolio, and how you can have those both within the same system. That also goes, I meant to include an example of this because I just finished kind of adding some of the captions and ideas here. When you're working on a sketch note but not ready for it to be public yet, you can have this set. You can just make it private. So essentially, this will restrict access to it. Let's imagine that this is one that I'm still working on, or I'm still like filling out all these fields and I don't want it to show up yet in my public portfolio. You could do what I just did and turn off that toggle so that if we hop back over to the browser, here we are now in Chrome. I should include some labels here so that it's always clear whether we're looking at Notion or a browser. Notice a couple of things. You don't see the private workspace on this public page. And if you go to the Sketchnote portfolio, that Tim Ferriss, Jim Collins one isn't there anymore. So that's a pretty cool way to make some things private until you're ready to publish them. Or keep some pages, some workspaces permanently private because that's just where you want to do some behind the scenes work. Hopping back over to Notion, let's set the Tim Ferriss, Jim Collins, Sketchnotes back to public. What if I just do restore? That will probably give the default settings back. Restore access. Okay, now it did kind of the back to my default, which is none of these things on, but yes, search engine indexing. Back to the home page. I've added a couple more callouts here, letting folks know from the home page that you can get access to these Notion templates by supporting this project on Patreon, which I'll show you in a second. But then I also wanted to point out the fact that I teach the skill of sketchnoting over at Verbal to Visual. So again, even if you already have a home on the internet where a particular project lives, but you still want this portfolio for your sketch notes, this is one way that you might kind of link to your other projects. And then a little tagline here, I'm building the tool that I wish existed. Come along for the ride. And to show you what's going on with Patreon, let me hop back over to the browser, get rid of my face in case that's been in the way, go back to the home page so that it kind of shows the public view of it. And let's check out Patreon. Notion for sketchnoters is creating software. Here are the membership levels that I currently have available. There could be some tweaking to this over time. I haven't launched it yet, but I think I'm ready to. I'm going to change this to templates plus live streams plus shoutouts. That shoutouts is if you want to be kind of included on that page from the Notion for Sketchnoters websites, but all of them are going to include the full amount of Notion resources that I'm working on. So you get these Notion template downloads, you get to vote on future features. I'll be sharing some behind the scenes and creating spaces for you to ask questions via posts and messages. The middle tier, we're going to have a monthly live stream. That's an add-on for this middle tier here. It'll be fun to chat with you about this project, about what you're working on, like how you're using it to share your sketch notes and hopefully build some cool things with those sketch notes. And then the third tier here has that added public shout out in case you want a little more of a boost in getting your work out there. So if it's not gonna break the bank, then consider supporting this project on Patreon. It would mean a lot to me. And it'll help me continue to improve these things over time. This is going to be a long-term project that I'm excited to continue working on and building and using myself. And support through Patreon is what will make that all feasible. And the reason that I'm so excited about this is because I think that there's so much potential in the work that sketchnoters are doing, and that there's such an opportunity for sketchnotes to build on each other and to build up to interesting, impactful projects. So my hope is that kind of no matter what type of work you're doing, what your the topics that your sketchnotes address, the ways in which you're maybe using those sketch notes to share ideas with other people. Maybe you're providing a service and sketch notes are an add-on to it. Maybe you, like me, are writing articles and making videos. My hope is that this system here just makes it easier for you to share that work with other people. Get your work out there. That's the public portfolio side of things here. But then that private workspace, what you do with your sketch notes over time, how you use them as building blocks. I'm fairly equally excited about both of those branches of this Notion system here. And if you are too, then continue following along. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, keep an eye on the public-facing website, and if it's in the cards, support this project on Patreon. I would love to connect with you there and hear about what you're up to. In the next video, I will have filled out my portfolio even more. Going to keep adding old sketch notes of mine to it. And then I'm going to show you how you can create your own information hubs within the private workspace. We'll take a look at the private workspace for the first time in the next video. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.